And that was really the rock bottom for me. And it got worse over time. The initial rock bottom, being heartbroken, being lonely, trying to rebound after a bodybuilding show, just depressed, suicidal, having suicidal ideations. That was the initial start for me, unfortunately. I think I fell into the trap of thinking, okay, if my girlfriend's a model, I'll be super happy and that'll fix my confidence issues. If I have money, that'll fix my confidence issues. And every time I checked off a new accomplishment, I didn't feel any better. So I assumed that, okay, this is going to do it. And I think it broke me when I realized that didn't fix anything internally.
Hi, Kevin. How are you doing?
Mark, I'm living the dream. Excited to chat with you, my friend.
I am excited to chat as well. You have an incredible story, and it starts when you're 20 years old. You have a great life, you have a great body, you have a great girlfriend, you have a good paying job, but all of a sudden something happens, crisis hits you, and you hit rock bottom. What happened?
I found out that money and external possessions do not fix internal voids and insecurities. And that was a really hard lesson to learn. I had all the external stuff, but internally I was unfulfilled. I was insecure. I was depressed. I was anxious. I was afraid of my own shadow. And my initial rock bottom was when my girlfriend at the time left me. It actually, and Mark, you'll understand this. I was going through a bodybuilding show, dieting, cardio, lifting 7 times a week, eating 1,500 calories, just not a good life at the time. And after I competed in the show and I won my class, a couple weeks later, my girlfriend sat me down and said, "Hey, I'm leaving. I'm not super fulfilled. I feel like you're not really pouring into my life and you're not the partner that I thought you were. I would have told you last month, but I genuinely thought you might kill yourself," because that's how just struggling I was. So that was my initial rock bottom. My girlfriend left me and everything that I thought I knew, I didn't. And I was trying to figure out who could ever love this version of Kev. What do I do? How do I come back from this? And that was really the rock bottom for me. And it got worse over time. I'm sure we'll get into that. But that was the initial rock bottom, being heartbroken, being lonely, trying to rebound after a bodybuilding show, just depressed, suicidal, having suicidal ideations. That was the initial start for me, unfortunately.
Wow. Did the breakup start that process, or were you already feeling that way prior to the breakup?
I was feeling that way prior to the breakup. I think I fell into the trap of thinking, okay, if my girlfriend's a model, I'll be super happy and that'll fix my confidence issues. If I have money, that'll fix my confidence issues. And every time I checked off a new accomplishment, I didn't feel any better. So I think after I had health, wealth, and love, I assumed that, okay, this is going to do it. And I think it broke me when I realized that didn't fix anything internally. And then obviously I wasn't a great partner because it was hard enough for me to pour into my own life, never mind somebody else's. So she did the right thing by leaving. I just wasn't capable of handling it at that point.
I totally resonate with you because I've been there where if I'm not loving myself, it's impossible for me to love someone else and give them everything that I have. You talked about confidence issues leading up to the breakup, right?
Yeah.
What was happening in your teenage years or young adulthood life? Was there something happened that created this lack of confidence in Kevin growing up?
I think it was the fact that my dad abandoned us. I didn't know my dad. I didn't meet my dad until I was 27. So I think that just hyper emotional, not logical at all, I internalized my dad leaving as me not being good enough. And unfortunately, that became an internal dialogue that I perpetuated. I never thought I was good enough to get a girlfriend when I was young. Somehow I always did. I have no idea how that happened. When I started to play baseball, I was really good at baseball. And I made the all-star team every single year, and I got recruited by teams to play. Mark, I just thought I got luckier more often than other people. I didn't think I was good. I thought I just got lucky more often than other people. That became my internal dialogue. I'm not good enough. I'm not smart enough. I'm not good looking enough, and I will never be successful. And when that is your internal dialogue, unfortunately, we find a way to self-sabotage. We find a way to set ourselves up for failure, to the point where when that partner left me, I'll never forget this. Sitting at my kitchen table, there was a part of me that was glad she left me because I knew it was going to happen eventually. And there was a piece of me that was relieved because I didn't have to feel like I was going to fail anymore. I already failed. That's over now. So yeah, I think most of it came from my childhood and being broke and not having a dad and feeling like I was defective because all my friends' families would try to adopt me and bring me in and set me up for a normal quote unquote life. I think that's where it all came from.
So many commonalities in between us, even though we have lived such different lives. I came from India at the age of 18 with almost nothing. And there were so many incredible people who tried to help me. And I wouldn't be here without them. I owe my life to them. But I remember feeling the feeling of I'm defective and everybody's trying to fix something. And I haven't had that thought in many years until you just said that. And it just gave me a flashback. The other thing you also mentioned, extreme imposter syndrome. Anybody who's been an entrepreneur, anybody who's sold anything, thinks this is the first sale I made, I got lucky, never going to happen. Yeah. You keep telling yourself that month after month, 9 months and now you're still getting lucky. But you truly believe that I'm just still getting lucky, right? And outsiders thinking, no way. So for you too, like getting all these successes, you truly believe that you're feeling lucky because the void is internal and logic doesn't fix that. It has to do with emotions, right?
Yeah.
Is that also the reason why you went into bodybuilding? Because you wanted to present a different image of yourself?
I went into bodybuilding when I was 16 because I was 5 foot and I knew I wasn't going to grow any taller. And I thought maybe I can grow in other ways. And it was mental health. It was self-expression. I was always a very physical kid. I never planned on doing any form of bodybuilding competition. I was in the gym one day when I was in my early 20s. Some guy came up to me and said, hey, have you ever thought of doing a bodybuilding competition? And I said, no, I'm not trying to be on stage in my underwear. That's going to be a pass from me, my friend. And he said, dude, you have a really good physique. I think you should do it. So then I went and found a coach. First coach didn't work, went to another coach, and it became this interesting journey. I didn't think it was going to be as hard as it was. That is one of the hardest things I've ever done. Shout out to any bodybuilders out there, Mark, you included. So yeah, I think a piece of it for me was I don't really like my body. I'm insecure of my height. I have good genetics, so let me go see what I can do in the gym. And then eventually that becomes, and it can become, a railing of significance. I always joke, if I was at a party and I was drinking and somebody spilled a drink, my shirt would be off before all of the liquid got out of the cup because I was in really good shape, and that's how I got significance. I dated some very attractive people. That's one of the reasons why, because I was in really good shape. Again, you can see how a result or a mindset ends up becoming a self-fulfilling prophecy, and that's all I thought I had. I'm in really good shape. I have abs. I can squat X amount of weight, whatever it is. But yeah, I think it started from an insecurity, and eventually it crossed the chasm after the bodybuilding show.
So your girlfriend leaves you. There is already a void within you before this has even happened. You just went through a bodybuilding show, which you know is exhausting. You're possibly at the lowest moment. And the last word she tells you is, I would have broken up with you a month ago, but I thought you'd kill yourself. And she goes, what happens next? How do you bring yourself out of that? Or did you?
First couple weeks, it was just dark. I did a lot of writing. I was writing music. I was writing poetry. I was just going through the feelings. A lot of working out. I was working out every day just to ground myself. And I started the journey of self-exploration. What did I do here? What part did I play in this happening? What can I learn from this? I started speaking very positively, posting positive quotes. A lot of what I'm doing today started in that moment. But unfortunately, I remember one night I was laying in bed and I was just saying affirmations. Like, I'm handsome, I'm worthy, I'm talented, I'm smart. And the last thing I said was, and this year I'm going to make the most money I've ever made in my entire life. Because I fell into the same trap that I had lived in where if I make a boatload of money, all these other problems will go away. And if I'm being honest, when my girlfriend left, my bills doubled because we were splitting everything. So I did need to make more money. My landlord at the time wanted to take her to court because her name was on the lease. And I said, do not do that. I will find a way to make this work. I promise I'll never miss payment. So the next year starts, I get promoted at my company. I was in an industry called weatherization. So we would travel up and down the East Coast of the US working on buildings to make them more energy efficient. And if we fast forward to the end of the year, I had spent 10 months living on the road because all of our contracts that year were out of state. I would leave either Sunday or Monday. I'd be gone for the week. I'd come home Friday night or Saturday morning. And that was my life for the entire year. Get to the end of the year. I opened my final pay stub and I made $100,000 at 26 with no college degree. It was a dream come true. But I had another one of those moments of realization where I thought to myself, I don't feel any different. Yes, I have more money in the bank and that's good. Certainty, right? That's good. Circumstances, but I'm no more confident. I'm no more secure. I don't feel any more fulfilled. If anything, I'm less fulfilled. And I realized for most of my life, I had lived unconsciously, especially that year. The opposite of unconscious is hyperconscious. So I started a podcast in 2017 called the Hyperconscious Podcast. I fell in love with podcasting as I fell out of love with my job. I've reached the pinnacle of what I'm going to do at this job. I am not willing to spend another year on the road to accomplish it. So I start calling out of work. I start leaving the job sites early. I start showing up late. And as Mark in the beginning, there's not a line of people that say, hey, I love this idea for the podcast. How much money do you want us to give you? I wish it was that easy. It doesn't work that way. So I had to keep going to this job, and I was homesick before I left, and I was depressed and I was anxious. And it all culminated with me waking up in a hotel room 6 hours away from where I lived at the time. I think my alarm went off at 5:30, 5:45, sat up. I slid to the edge of the bed, and this is a crusty, gross hotel room. We're not staying at nice places. And the best way to explain it, Mark, is there's 10 different televisions on in my head at the same time, and every single one is on a different station. And one is saying you're stuck at this job forever. You're not that smart. You didn't go to college. You got lucky to get this job. Do not leave and mess this up. You will never get an opportunity like this again. If you ever did leave, what would your friends think? You make more money than any of your friends. Your friends love the fact that you make money, significance. What would your family think? I make more money than anybody in my family, and my family is super, super proud of me. And then the loudest, most obvious one was, what are you going to do after this? I didn't have a plan A. This job was my plan B that I fell into. I don't know if they make plans C, D, E, and F. I don't know if that's even a thing. So I thought to myself, if I was just to take my life, I would take all of these problems with me and I wouldn't have to think about this anymore. And it was a very familiar feeling because that was a feeling that I had earlier that prior year. And I had that feeling a couple of years before that too. So this wasn't the first time, but this was the most serious time. Luckily, I had a really good friend who I felt safe with, who I trusted, who I could be vulnerable with. And I reached out to him and I texted him and explained what was going on. And he gave me a lot of advice, as he has done over the last 7 years. But the thing I remember the most was, Kev, over the last couple of years, your awareness, hyper-conscious, has changed a ton, but your environments have remained the same. I think it's time for you to change your environment. So that gave me the light at the end of the tunnel. That gave me hope. That gave me a new perspective. And then I ended up leaving that job 3 or 4 months later and partnering up with him. And then, in 2018, I became a full-time podcaster and entrepreneur with 0 results or money.
But that is the beginning of a next chapter in your life.
Yes.
Because flashback, fast forward 7 years, now you have Next Level University, you're very successful, you've over 1,500 episodes. People who are listening to this are entrepreneurs. People who are listening to this have a voice. They have stories. They want to be able to share with others and maybe perhaps even do podcasts. Tell us a little bit about your journey. Not only the emotional journey of, I just started something brand new. There is nobody lining up to buy my product. I'm going to pay bills. But also maybe some tactical pieces that you would give to somebody who's starting this journey so that they could get off to a different start and perhaps learn from the mistakes that you made.
Yeah, very transparently, there were no products or services for the first 2 years. So I didn't make a dime from podcasting for the first couple of years. It was the hardest thing ever. I was $30,000 in credit card debt. It got to the point where my now wife, but she was my girlfriend at the time, I couldn't buy her Christmas presents. I had no money. There was no money for anything. My car broke down. I couldn't get it fixed. It was brutal. I got sent to collections for late car insurance. It was absolutely brutal. So in the beginning, the hardest thing was, one, I don't feel good enough. So how am I going to do this? I'm not an entrepreneur. That was a big piece. And then the second thing was, I don't know how to make money. I'm not good at making money outside of working at a job. I've never had to do that before. What worked really well for me was I started coaching for free. That's how we started this whole thing. That's how we started monetizing. Is I got 5 people that I knew listened to the podcast. Hey, Mark, I know you listen to the show. I've never done coaching. It's something I'm interested in doing. I'd love to coach you totally for free. We'll do it for 2 months and there's no strings attached. I just want to get my feet under me. I reached out to 5 people and they all said yes. I said, yeah, sure, let's do it. We love the podcast. It's free. Yeah, we're in. And at the end of the 8 weeks, I told everyone, I said, this has been awesome. This is amazing. I've learned so much. You've learned a lot. Hopefully, I can't do this for free anymore because I need to find a way to start making money. What do you think of $50 a week? And everybody said yes. So I went from $0 to $250 a week. And that was life-changing money for me at the time. And that's really how we began. And then we had other products and services and that type of stuff. The one thing, the best piece of advice I can give, because I see it with the wonderful clients I work with, is you really have to know who you're talking to. One thing is audience understanding. If you know who you're talking to, you know what episodes are going to work, you know what guests are going to work, you know what products and services are going to work, you know what titles are going to work, you understand how to talk to the person that's on the other side of the speaker. That's one thing. The other thing that I wish I knew that I just didn't at the time is there's a big difference between hunting and farming. yes, hopefully it builds demand, but you're going to have to go out and find the people that listen to the podcast and bring them back and then add value. They're not just going to give you money. It doesn't work that way unless you have a very specific demographic. It doesn't really work that way. That would be another thing. And then I think the biggest thing is you have to be focused on improving every single day, little by little. I think the bare essentials, the easiest way to get in, that's fine in the beginning. Just get a mic. If you have a camera, awesome, whatever. But we can't just lie on that. We have to focus on, okay, now I'm going to focus on getting better as an interviewer and then getting better as a speaker. I'm going to buy a new camera. I'm going to buy a new microphone. I'm going to improve my backdrop. I'm going to invest some money into this. One of the most common things that I see, unfortunately, is usually somebody starts at a level and then they end up staying at that level and they wonder why other things aren't growing. And it's because, unfortunately, as the creator, they're not growing. So that's why I think self-improvement is so important, because your business, your podcast, your coaching, whatever it is, it's probably only going to grow to the level that you grow. So that's always something that I give for advice.
Absolutely. Let's talk about each of those. Like the first one is the ideal listener, right? There is sometimes a problem, just like in building a business, who I think my ideal customer is, or who I want my ideal customer is to be, is sometimes very different than who I actually can service. So I'm sure that perhaps you meet some people who are coaching with you who want their ideal customer to be a certain type of audience. But maybe working with them, you realize, no, not really. Your strengths lie here. If someone doesn't have a coach like yourself guiding them through, what are some steps they can take on their own to bridge that gap?
I am somebody who always suggests people look at the data. So if you sit down and look on wherever you're hosting your podcast and you go through all of your episodes, let's figure out which ones are the highest hitters. Why are they the highest hitters? Is it because the guest shared it? Or is it because you use the word vulnerability, or you use the word fitness, or you use the word sex, or you use the word sales, margins, whatever? And then we have to look for patterns there. That's one way. Then I try to dive even deeper into the analytics, whether it's Spotify for podcasters, Apple Podcast Connect. You can look at your consumption rates. You can look at your subscribers. I'm looking at, okay, 75% of this episode got consumed. Why? 150% of this episode got consumed. That means somebody listened to this episode twice. Why? I am just constantly looking at data, because the data gives us proof of what we want or what we don't. And then the other thing that I always suggest for people is, this is why social media is so important. Not necessarily because you're going to get conversion for people listening to the podcast. It's not necessarily about that. But what you can do is you can go look at who's watching your story on Instagram every day, message that person and say, hey, Mark, I can see that you're new here. I hope you're enjoying the content, or whatever. And then some people will self-identify and say, yeah, I found your podcast and I absolutely love it. Oh, interesting. I didn't realize you listened to the podcast. What are the top 3 things that are your most favorite that you've learned so far? And then boom, you're doing market research based on somebody who's actually listening. If you do that for long enough, you start to see the patterns. You can just see. And then eventually, let's say you have a Facebook group, which I always suggest, what you can do is you can have a requirement to answer 3 questions before somebody joins, and you can ask 3 questions that'll help you understand your audience at a deeper level. For us in the beginning, it was on a scale of 1 to 10, how confident are you? What is your biggest struggle you're dealing with right now? And then how did you find us? And it was a beautiful test for us to see, oh, this person said they have very low self-belief. Interesting. Maybe we'll do episodes on that. Awesome. This person's struggling in relationships. Maybe we should do more episodes on relationships. Awesome. So I think there's 2 ways to do it. You just talk about what you want and hope over time you get the right flow of people, or you optimize your content for the people that you want, and over time you end up getting that audience. I just don't think the Joe Rogan method really works for most people. Yeah, we all want to have cool conversations with cool people. We have to figure out what problem are we ultimately solving for the podcast listener. That's the ultimate goal.
If you are already a celebrity, no matter what you do, you will attract attention.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, some of us aren't celebrities.
Most of us, Mark. Most of us.
Yeah. No, I love the direction you take, because it's exactly what we do in building any type of other business, right? It's data-driven decisions. Instead of just putting yourself out there and hoping and praying that somebody would listen and come, build and they will come. It doesn't work that way. You build something and you just test and you read data and you analyze data and you retest. And the process is data-driven, and analytics speaks for himself.
Yep.
You talked about self-improvement, right? And it's a double-edged sword, because while it is absolutely crucial, like you said, to be able to continue to grow, because your personal growth is directly reflected on the work you're doing and the levels you're going to, a lot of people hide behind personal growth, and they're never truly ready. Today
Yeah.
they're reading a book, tomorrow they're taking a course. And I used to be that person. I'm not making fun of that person because I used to be that person. I understand the obstacles that I had back then, and it made me better as a business coach. So for yourself now, when you come across somebody who has joined your program and is like really motivated, they just want to continue learning and they're not taking the steps you're asking them to do. What do you do with them to get past that?
I am a very big proponent of taking messy action. For me, I push clients to say, I don't care that you don't have the perfect mic. I don't care that you don't have the perfect backdrop. I want you to record an episode and I want to get it out. I can't tell you how many people have come to me and said, this was a goal of mine for the last 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 years. The reason is they just hype themselves up and they think it has to be a certain way. When I, quote unquote, the podcast coach, say to them, don't worry about it. Your backdrop is better than mine was in the beginning. Why can't we just start now? That's really what I'm doing is I'm injecting courage. I'm giving them accurate expectations. I'm trying to create a valid time perspective so they understand how this is actually going to work. And I'm saying it's good enough. I know you don't like to hear that. I know that probably scares you. Trust me, it's good enough. We've launched many a podcast. It's good enough. And you cannot learn lessons until the thing is live anyway. So you're going to psych yourself up and you're just going to learn and grow, but you're never going to put it into reality and grow that thing. So ultimately, what I'm always trying to do is I'm trying to close the gap between awareness and implementation. Some people are focused on awareness and learn, but the gap between when I learn something and when I practice it is just too long. I'm trying to close that by telling them, look, it's okay. And you're going to learn more lessons by dropping the episode than you would by just researching stuff behind the scenes. You can't really build momentum until it's a train. And that's what we're trying to build here is a train.
And that's where having a coach is where it's at. Because that level of accountability, that level of, hey, you can do this, I'm with you no matter what, let's do it together, that cannot be attained by just self-guided course or reading a book or watching a YouTube video, right? Somebody who's there with you every step of the way, believing in you and pushing you to move forward, sometimes is the momentum we need because it's scary.
Of course.
Talking about fear, you talked about the 2 years that you spent going into credit card debt, trying to build this podcast, right? There was a time in my life where I had a 6-figure job and I wanted to learn sales and marketing because I just realized I'm just a nerd kid behind a computer. I know nothing about sales and marketing. Both of us had something in us. We took the courage when we were young. We were courageous because we're also stupid. Sometimes it works out and sometimes it doesn't. But what it was, luckily it worked out, right? But not everybody has the luxury to do that. No matter what we were going through in our lives right back then, we had, in a way, a luxury to not take a pay for 2 years, right? When somebody comes to you now, especially the barrier to entry to a podcast is so low. All you need is a microphone, right? How do you help people with that mindset? I need to be able to make money now because I'm sure people want to get started and they want to make money. This is why they're here. Not everybody's just podcasting to be able to talk. How do you help them through that?
I am just very honest with them, like to the point where I just won't work with someone if that is their mindset. I had a potential client who wanted to work together, and he said, how long will it take me to get to where you are? And I said, brother, we're looking at 7 years probably, because I'm 7 years in and there's 2 of us, right? So we don't have 24 hours a day. We have 48 hours a day because there's 2 of us. And he's, wow, I thought it would be a little bit more lucrative than that. And I said, of course, everybody does. That's why they start. So the best advice I can give, other than breaking someone's heart by telling them the very challenging truth, is usually what I say is, I think the most beneficial thing for you would be to keep doing what you're doing that pays the bills day in and day out, because that's going to be your sustainable fuel for this journey as we build the podcast. That way, all of your revenue does not have to come from the podcast. We need to have a train that's rolling now, a short-term train, which is your 9 to 5 or whatever it is, while we build the long-term train. The reason I give that advice is because there's a piece of me that kind of wishes I did that too. It would be really nice to make $75,000 a year and podcast. That would have been really nice. So that's usually the advice I give people, because the best way in the beginning, when you don't have any credibility or you don't have any authority or you don't have any perception or experience, is to give stuff away. And if you're relying on, I need to get a client to pay the bills, you're not going to be able to play the long game. And you're most likely not going to survive. You're not going to be around long enough. Podcasting, content creation, business, as Mark, it really is the survival of the fittest. If your business is around for 20 years, you're going to learn lessons and you'll probably be way more successful in year 20 than you were in year 1. So it's really that. It's setting accurate expectations on how long this probably will take. And if you think this is going to be your saving grace, I'm telling you it's not. And if you think just because podcasting is sexy that this is going to be the thing, it can be the thing, but it's not going to be the thing just because it's a podcast and you want to do it. And I usually suggest, if you have a 9 to 5, we are going to want to hang on to that thing for at least a few years so we can have some sustainable revenue and some sustainable fuel while we build this long-term thing. This podcast thing is a decade thing, not a day thing. So I try to dissuade people from making emotional decisions like I did because it hurt me badly.
And you know, 100% truth. I love the fact that you're open and honest and straightforward. The internet has given everybody a mouthpiece, and that's a wonderful thing because everybody has a voice. But it's also given a megaphone to charlatans who just lie about stuff and lure people into a reality that's really not a reality, right? It's just the same thing. Like you go to a gym and you look at the most jacked guy and you say, how long does it take me to get there? And I'm at a 41% body fat and he says 7 years. I'm like, 7 years? Why can't I do that in 3 months? You know, like, it's laughable. But we have all either been in the position where someone is telling us that, or naively we have been on the other side where we are the one asking for that. So I love the fact that you set realistic expectations into how the process is going to go, because whether we do a certain thing or not, it comes from like a life that we envision happening long term, as opposed to a shortcut to success. And when someone is approaching it as, well, am I going to be profitable in 4 months? You're looking for a shortcut to success. You're not doing it with passion, and without passion, it's not going to work out.
100%. I could not agree more. I started podcasting because I thought to myself, if I could find a way to do this and make money, my life would be incredible. It wasn't, I'm going to convince myself I'm passionate about this. No, I loved it so much where I needed to find a way to do it forever. And not everybody is that way with podcasting. So it might not be the thing for them. And that's totally fine. I think it's more the unsexy fundamentals than it is the mechanism. You could start a blog and you can start a YouTube channel. You can start a business. You can start all these things. But that doesn't mean you're going to be successful. It's the mindset beneath the person that is really ultimately going to decide. So I could not agree more.
And it's hard. There are not a lot of people who are willing to continue to put in the work without seeing results for a very long time. Ability to deal with delayed gratification, where I'm continuing to put work in. And yes, I'm not making $1 right now, but I understand the vision. I have a coach that has done it already and is showing me the step-by-step path. So I need to believe the system. I need to trust the system, and I trust the process going to do the work. That's hard. There's a lot of mindset component to it, isn't it?
Yeah, I think fitness has helped me a lot because if you're doing dieting and exercising, you realize that it's like a year-long thing. Okay, I'm going to bulk up and then I'm going to lose weight. And that takes 8 months, a year, depending on how you're doing it. So sometimes you feel like you're going backwards when in reality, you're not. It just looks like you are. And I think expectations become our desires, and our desires become our expectations. And all I mean by that is that's why people can get away with saying, I can help you achieve X result in 3 days, because that's what our desire is. So when we see messaging that aligns with our desires, we want it to be convenient and true. And that's why I think awareness is so important. The only way you can be taken advantage of from stuff like that is lack of awareness. Mark, I can't sell you a product that tells you you're going to lose 15 pounds in a day. You're too aware. You know that's not real. That's based on years and years of awareness. So I think that's why awareness is so important. And that's my goal, is to spread awareness, even if it results in me not working with someone. I would rather them know how hard this is going to be. It might not be good for you. It might not be good for your lifestyle. It might not create the day-to-day life that you want. I'd much rather you walk away intact than try this and realize it's not for you. If I can be honest enough where it changes somebody in a positive way, that's what it's about anyway.
And that's your brand. And when you speak that way, when you speak openly and honestly and straight to the point, and maybe it's not the answer the person is looking for right then and there, when they go back into the real world, because time will always reveal the truth, and they realize a month, 6 months, a year later, after they have bought some other program with some other coaches who made some false promises, Kevin told me that a year ago. The person I'm going to come back to is Kevin.
It's true.
Love it. So we talked about messy action. We talked about putting yourself out there. We talked about just record something, then analyze the data, see who's listening. We talked about the importance of continued self-improvement by hiring a coach, by getting resources that's going to make you better. What are a few other concrete tactical steps that a beginner podcaster should take?
I would say go hard on social media. Like, really, we have to understand that the podcast is just a piece of the business. It's a big piece, but it's just a piece. So I would say post on social media every single day and focus on building real, authentic relationships with people. That's one. I would say send a message every single day to get higher quality guests. It's a numbers game. If I told you how many, I couldn't tell you how many messages we sent for guests, thousands and thousands of thousands, but that was every day. Send a message to be a guest on a podcast every single day. That's a huge one. One of the things that has helped me a ton is every day for a year, I would go on my Instagram story and I would just do a 1-minute video. It really helped me with my speaking and with my storytelling and all. That was huge. One of our mentors gave us this habit every day at the end of the day, sit down and write out a lesson from the day and then a story that helps you connect that lesson, because ultimately if you're a podcaster, you're using lessons and stories till you get blue in the face. Those are probably maybe 5 that I would give, because they're all going to help you in a different way. Focusing on becoming a better speaker is always going to be valuable as a podcaster, a coach, a speaker. Focusing on social media is going to help, because social media is our resume, but it's also going to help you connect with your audience. So it's really the competence of becoming a better podcaster and the confidence of understanding your audience at a deeper level, and just self-awareness in general. I would say those are probably the, however many I gave, 3 to 5 that I would suggest.
Yeah, well, I love it. I love it. This whole time we've been alluding to you as a coach, one of the greatest coaches there is for podcasting, because you started from nothing with $0 and you build this empire. We've been talking about the programs that you have. It's almost like we're hitting around the G spot, right? It's time to give the people what they really want to hear. Tell us about your program. Tell us how it works. If somebody's listening to this, they want to join, what do they need to know?
Ultimately, when we started this, it was our goal to solve as many problems as possible for the typical podcaster. So we do all the audio editing, we do all the video editing, we have an in-house production team, we post to YouTube, we do thumbnails, we post to all the podcast platforms, we do the show notes, we fully produce your show, and we create social media stuff. And you get me coaching you bi-weekly or monthly, depending on how you want to do it. And you get access to myself and the team through WhatsApp 24/7. So I had a client the other day who was doing their first video recording, and they messaged me and said, "Hey, Kev, I'm a little nervous. How do I do this, this, and this?" I responded right back, and they had a very successful interview for the first video one they did with the guest. So you're getting customer service. It's not just, in the beginning, Mark, I thought, I'll just coach people. And then I realized what's really hard to coach someone if they don't have powerful content. I can help you create powerful content. But I also realized just because you have powerful content does not mean you're going to get the results you want. So that's why it's podcast production and coaching. That's the ultimate thought. I want you to save as much time as possible so you can go make money in your business or in your 9 to 5. And then I can help you with the awareness and the understanding that you need to achieve the success you want.
I love it, because you're right. Coaching in its purest form is just giving knowledge. And knowledge is wonderful, but it does us nobody any good until you actually able to apply to it. And the way you coach things is that keep the job, keep the income coming in, let's do this on the side. So when you just give them the knowledge and not the actual tools to be able to do it or do it for them, in your example, actually they're under more pressure because now they've spent a lot of money on coaching and they have no results. So what you're doing is you're creating a done for you service where they're coming up and it's just end to end. They have your brain and your team's brain to be able to help with the strategic side of things, and then your team's manpower to be able to do all the technical part of things. So all they do is sit in front of the computer with a mic, with a camera, has a conversation, and then Kevin has it taken care of from there.
That's it. Yep. 100%. You said it better than I did, Mark. I need to hire you. I need to send you some money to help.
Just trying to pay attention.
I appreciate it.
It's still early in the morning, so my brain is still intact. I love it, Kevin. Anything else that you would like to share with the guests?
I'm grateful. I'm grateful that you had me on. I'm grateful for the conversation. I had the pleasure of connecting with you behind the scenes, and you're a wonderful human. So I appreciate it. I appreciate the platform. I appreciate the opportunity, and I appreciate the professionalism. Your audience is very blessed to have a host like you at the helm of the ship.
Love it. Thank you so much. I have mutual feelings. A lot of people have accomplished a lot of things, and credit needs to be given where credit is due. But we have a responsibility that we have to carry out in our lives, to ourselves, to our family, to our audience. And that, to me, makes a full human being, right? Ironically, the path that you are on, talking about love and relationships and health and mental health and all that stuff, it's also the same path that I am on, right? Yeah. So I feel a certain type of kinship towards you. I feel like we're in the same wavelength. And it's just a pleasure sometimes talking to people who are just like you, because as successful as we get, sometimes the imposter syndrome is still there. Is it just me? Am I only the crazy one? So I love to have met another crazy one, the guy who's out there changing the world.
I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Right back at you. Right back at you, my friend.
Thank you so much for being on the show. It was an honor and a pleasure, and I hope we can talk again soon.
Likewise.